Hi, I'm Sherryl Perez. Thanks for joining me today. This project, we will be painting flags on the roadside. And one of the reasons why I chose this is because I really liked the composition of the flags in the decreasing size with the backdrop of a fall theme. The project will learn quite a few things. We'll learn about composition, color mixing, wet into wet, and direct painting, to name a few. You should have received your photo reference by now. And if you're all set, we'll get started. I will be taking pauses throughout various steps so that you can catch up to me. And I will then tell you the next step that I will be taking. So it should be pretty easy to follow along. If you have any questions as you're going along, please feel free to email me, Cheryl at cherylperez.com, or you can find me on Instagram or Facebook.
I see it was
Okay,
recorded.
so this week we've got a flag. Let me pull up the photo reference because I want to talk about the photo reference a little bit. And you both received this. So did either of you draw this already?
No.
Okay, good. I had a little difficulty drawing it. I erased it a couple of times because I kept starting with the large flag. And what I ended up doing, it was always in the wrong place and I could never fit the other two in. So when you draw this, start with the small flag and work your way up. And that way, you can see the small flag, the next flag's, almost twice as big. And then this one's quite large. We're going to eliminate, the phone poles, the electric poles. This is a sign for whoever's house this was. That's coming out. I did like I liked the progression of the sign or the flags, but then I also liked the progression of the mailboxes. I kind of thought it gave a nice, a nice shape to the painting.
Mm-hmm.
So those are, and I'll show you my drawing as soon as I get done talking. Now the tree, it's a little bit light of leaves, and I'm going to add actually more leaves to this. So when you draw the tree, you don't have to draw on all these branches. The branches we'll put in later. You can draw on like the main part of it because that is actually this flagpole is attached to that tree. And then the other ones I've kind of just got hanging in there, but I'll attach those to trees later too. I love the road disappearing and I love all these shadows, but I didn't draw in the shadows. I also did not draw in all the stars because we're not going to be painting each individual star. The stripes on this you will have to draw in, and so I will show you my drawing now. Okay, so here is my first flag, my second flag, and you can make it wave however way you want. You can make it flat if you want to, and the third flag. And when I was drawing in the stripes, just because I can't keep them straight, I usually put a little X on the red ones so I know where I'm at in my drawing. And then when I paint them, I'll take those out after I get my first glaze of red on there. And then here you see the three little mailboxes. You don't have to put the numbers on. The center mailbox is like a cluster of mailboxes, just did one of those. And then I just kind of drew some shapes back there for the trees. So the flags and the mailbox, the little road, wherever your road is ending, you want to put that line in, and then just the suggestion of the trees. Then while you are drawing, I'm going to go in and probably put some masking fluid around the edges of the flag. And I may even put some painter's tape over the flag. So that way when we do this background first, I don't have to worry about getting yellows and blues and greens on my flag. So I think I'll give you about, maybe 15, 20 minutes to draw. I'll come back. I'll show you what I've done with the masking fluid, and then I'll let you either do that or we'll start painting. So I'll pause here, and if you have questions, just let me know as you're working through this. Doesn't have to be perfect because, like I said, the nice thing about this is the flag and the wind, so they're blowing all over the place. So you don't have to be perfect with your waves and the flag. Okay?
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay, so now you should have your drawing done. And like I said, I went in And just as, this is more for a barrier, I want to do the background first, and we'll be doing a lot of wet. So if any of the water starts to drip, the masking fluid will just act as a barrier. So on the two smaller ones, just if you look at the photo, I think there's going to be enough sky in this area. So I didn't really need to think I needed to put in a full masking of the flag. Now the larger one, because this tree is going to be much fuller with foliage, I'm using the poor man's, they actually sell professional masking. It's not called masking tape, it's masking paper or something like that, which I always forget to buy. But if you could just keep the barrier, but this will just give this flag a little bit more protection. It's painter's tape. So I just kind of put it along the center. It is certainly not going to be a water repellent. So I'm still going to have to be careful along my edges because water and paint will seep under that. But I did my line of my masking fluid, let it dry, and then I just cut a bunch of strips of painter's tape to put over that large flag. You could do, you know, the mailboxes too, but those are going to end up being gray anyway. So any colors that we have in through here, the blues and greens, the gray would be deep enough to cover if there was any overspraying or over painting, if we're doing any spattering or anything. You don't have to do this, but like I said, I just wanted to give you an option to keep it a little bit more protected. Or if you wanted to look online to find that masking paper, I think Dick Blick does sell it. It comes in sheets about this size, and you just cut it to the size that you want, slap it down, and you're good to go. Contact paper also works. We've used that before in my classes to cover large areas. So I will let you now do that step. I'm going to pause it for a few minutes, and when we come back, we'll start painting. All right, so I think we're ready to paint. And one of the things I like about this photo is that there's this nice like white glow in here, and I want to try to preserve that while I'm painting. So the first step is going to be, this will be in multiple steps, but just to give you an idea of where we're going, I'm going to try to get some of this blue sky in, and it doesn't matter that I've got the tree over here because the blue will be light enough where any of the golds will turn to green or darker fall colors. Same with this, the green and the blue is fine because yellow and blue make green. And then I'll just leave some of this white underneath this flag in this area of the painting. So that way, and I think it'll make this yellow section down here pop. So we'll start up here. I'm gonna get all of this pretty wet. I've got a nice, this is a 16 round brush. Just kind of moving in here. Even where the tree, where it's going to be fuller, I just want to make sure that we have coverage for the sky. And I'll even move it, I'll go into that white area where I want to keep it white, just so it has a gradual decrease in color. So I've wet probably about the top 2/3 of the page. I'm going to start with cerulean blue. And really the top corner is where you want to make sure you get full coverage. I'm not going to worry about clouds up there. I just want to get in this case, just the blues. I know sometimes we try to get in clouds and stuff, but I just don't think there's enough room to do that in this painting. So get up to the edge. And like I said, I'm not going to try to paint directly straight through that, even though I have it covered, because I'm still afraid it's just a little bit of a barrier. It's not a full. And then, like I said, in that area, keep it kind of light. This section up here. And if I want to get a little bit of a darker color up in that top corner, just to give it some variation, I can get some cobalt blue and kind of push some of that in here too, in certain spots. And the cobalt blue will be nice because that's about the color that we'll be using for the stars later. So it'll give some nice flow from here into the flags.
Are we supposed to be painting with you?
It's up to you. I think if you wanted to just watch and take notes, sometimes that's
It's a lot
more
easier.
instructive. Yeah. I'll give you time to do this once I'm
Okay.
at the next stage. Then, and actually this might be a little bit dark over here, so I'm going to dab some of this up a little bit. Okay. Then for this section, I'm going to switch to another brush, a little bit of a smaller brush. And this section, this little tree here, it's kind of got a green gold color to it. So I'm going to start with some gamboge and kind of just, it's pretty wet. So I think we can get some of these branch colors. I want to leave some of that space that you can see through. So I'm going to have gamboge, and then I guess I'll see how sap green matches with that. That might give me that nice green gold color. And I'm just going to lay this in a little bit over those. Still want that gold to come through. That looks pretty nice. And then just darken it in a couple spots. I'll just go right in with some Prussian blue, medium to dark blue. Although that looks pretty nice. I don't want to really mess it up. You can see some darks in there though, so we want to get in. And I'm working on a little bit of a slant. And if it's too green, I'm going to go in now with some Quin Gold. If you don't have Quin Gold, you can use burnt sienna or a darker yellow. Quin Gold is really a nice, you can see it on my palette over here. It's just a really nice goldy color. Throw some of that in here, darken that up just a little bit. And I think maybe just do a little bit of spatter in there to get some leaf shapes. I'm just tapping my brush. And I think I'm going to leave that one. I've got a little bit of a green up there. So I think that's good for that tree on the side. Okay, and I think I'll stop here. I'm going to let my top dry a little bit. I don't want to do the whole tree right now. I want to let that dry because I don't want the fullness that I have on the tree on the left up here. I want to leave some more spaces open. So I'll pause, let you do that part, and I'll be right back. Okay, so my paper is it's still a little damp, but I think I'm able to move on. The one thing I forgot to do over here with this tree was just put in some branches. I like to do it after the fact because you don't want to have all these big brown or black branches coming through. So I'm mixing a little bit of burnt umber and sepia on a flat brush. You can see in the corner over here. And I'm just gonna kind of put in a few, just a little bit of a few branches. Nothing too much. It actually looks like it's still really, really wet. And then actually I'm okay with the way that looks, even though it's melting into the, all right, so I'm gonna leave that. Now the large tree up here, I do wanna leave, like the picture has a lot of bareness, but I don't wanna leave that much bareness. And this is a technique that I like to use, and I'm using a spray bottle. I'm gonna just spritz a couple of these areas. And there's a difference between a spray bottle and a mister. The spray bottle, if you have it set correctly, you just get some nice water droplets by squirting it. And I'll show you that on my hand. You can see that. If it's a misting bottle or a spray bottle, it'll kind of mist a whole area and it will be just wet. You won't get those individual water droplets. And I want the individual water droplets because I want the water and the paint to work for me. I don't want to have to draw in and paint in all those little leaves. I'm still going to hold my hand over this just in case I go rogue here and I spray a little off. So I'm just going to spritz a couple of these areas. Not too much because like I said, I want to leave some of those areas open. And I'll hold this up and hopefully you can see what I mean. If I tip it sideways, oh, there you go. You can just see that there's just some glossiness on the paper. And that is now where I'm going to just apply some of my paint. And it should, I'm going to turn sideways just so I can see that glossiness too. So now if I just kind of dab my paint on, it'll move into that wetness and I don't have to do too much work. If I want to add a little bit more, I can add a little bit more. So right now I'm putting in New Gamboge. And I want to keep this tree pretty much on the brown gold side. So now I'm going to put in some Quin Gold. And I can do a little bit of spattering here too if I need to. Just cover up that sky a little bit. Probably could get a little bit more. There we go. In there. You get this nice lacy pattern going. And I'm just going to move down my page. And this is nice because I can see some of the, actually a little bit of the spritzer on my flag. If I didn't have the masking fluid, not that I would be putting paint there, but at least I know it's covering somewhat. And then I can get some up here. This is still all New Gamboge. I'm just kind of visualizing where I might put a branch when I draw those in. So I'll have a branch coming out here. There's going to be one up here. And then this will be more the fullness of the tree and through here. Still New Gamboge. Get some up here. I'm going to move over with my Quin Gold. And I don't want to go directly over it. And you can see here how you kind of get that nice color variation. If I lay it next to, they'll merge a little bit, but they won't completely overtake each other. Let me put some of this here. And I flip it back this way, I can kind of see what I've got going. And then I can use some burnt umber, or if you don't have a dark brown, if you mix some purple with your Quin Gold or with your New Gamboge, that'll give you a darker brown. And now I can start kind of swishing in some more shapes. You want to have a little bit of those darks in there. And if it isn't quite moving the way you want it to, I'll look at the way that just kind of went right together there. And I can fill in some spaces. Maybe I don't want so much whites coming through. And then this I've left it because that's going to be my tree trunk. So I'm pretty happy with this, but I am, just to unify it a little bit, I do like some of these little spatters. I think you can see those in here. So I'm going to take a little bit of my Quinn Gold. I'm going to turn it this way just so I don't get it on my flag. So usually I'm going to just spatter a little bit. So I just loaded my brush and I'm going to tap some color in between just to give it some variation. And then the same with my burnt umber. A little bit of sepia too, give me some nice darks. There we go. So you gotta cover a large area with a little bit of effort. So while I'm gonna let that dry a little bit, because now if I try to put my branches in, I'm gonna hold this up a little bit. You can see it's pretty wet. I do have some channels of paint where I don't in through here that I don't, if I try to put branches in, they don't just seep in. But I can start getting in my tree trunk. And in the picture, it's pretty dark. I don't know if I necessarily want to go that dark, but I'm going to just wet and have it go off the page. And that'll be my first thing here. If I want to make it lively, I'm going to start with some, the sun is coming across here, so I can put some nice Quinn Gold in here. And I do have a little branch. I think there's some branches even coming through here, so I'll have it go right up behind that tree or the flag. I can use my sepia or burnt umber, but I think I'll show you how the purple mixes in really nicely. With this, you get a nice variation of that. I'll just start putting those over there. And then if I go in and take some indigo and kind of get some of these tree, you get the bark kind of shape coming. I'll turn it sideways again. And then I think to tone it down just a little bit, I can add some alizarin crimson. That should really take some of the green tone away. Green and red make a nice brown also. And I can just start drawing up some of these branches. And with this, I don't want to overdo it. And maybe that's still a little bit too bright, so I can tone it. But I do like the way this color on the tree is kind of turning out. So you can see I'm just kind of swishing in some branches. Don't want to go overkill. I'm going to let this dry, but I have a feeling that my tree trunk might need a little bit of darkening after this does dry. I think that's okay. And I might need a few leaves in through there, but I'm not going to try now because it'll all just blend together. So why don't you give that a try, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I'm ready to move on, but as in anything, when you do something, if you just stop and take a quick look at what you've done, I've got this nice grouping here, but it looks like it's a little lopsided. I think I need to put a little bit of something here just so that it doesn't stop at the flag and then there's nothing. So I'm going to do that real quick. And same with you, if you want to reassess. I'm just going to try to shoot a little bit of water over the top. Oh, that's a little bit too much. Oh, maybe that'll work. And at the top of the tree, it has the lighter color. So I'm just going to try to drop in maybe some of the new gamboge to kind of bring this into, now that other tree is dry, I can kind of go over and it's overlapping. It gives you a little bit more perspective. So that was the new gamboge. I'm going to take a little bit of burnt or Quin Gold and get right up under there into some of those spots. And then just a little bit of the darker brown. I've got a little bit up there, but I don't want to go overkill because I don't want to ruin it. And then same with this, maybe just a little bit of spattering. And that's it. I think that fills it in a little bit better now. You can just see looks more like that side of the tree is finished. Okay, so the bottom half, I'm going to put in this nice bright yellow. So whatever the lightest yellow you have, we're going to use. Notice that it's taller where you're closer, and it's declining as you go toward the distance. So we've got that nice perspective going. But also notice these other 2 or 1 or however many flags you put in, they have to be connected to a tree. And these trees back here are also that nice bright yellow. So if you have the misting bottle, use that. If not, you can wet, not the evergreens though. We're just going to wet this section up under here and up and through here. And then so that you don't get a hard edge, you'll go along and dab the edge. I'm going to try misting this time just to show you how the difference between the water drops and the misting would affect your painting. So in this case, I'm going to cover my mailboxes too. And I really just want to mist it so that we get a nice edge like this, like in this tree here. I just want it to kind of dissipate up, and I don't want that hard edge. So if you're going to wet it, you're going to dab along whatever edge you have. If you're misting it, you should just get that edge as you have it. So we're going to kind of mist in between here. I'm going to look sideways, see where it is. And this is already dry. It shouldn't affect the darker. And again, if you look at this, you can kind of see it's wet. Maybe if I can turn it on its side. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But you get this fine mist. I'm going to dab out where my mailboxes are because that'll kind of dry that paper right there. So the yellow doesn't have to go directly over that mailbox. And in this case, like I said, I'm going to just try to get some of this nice bright. This is Aureolin. You can use cad yellow. And kind of the same way. Now here, we're really filling in the space. You're not going to have that opening like we had here up above. You can put some of those in yourself if you want to. But I just really want to get some of this nice yellow in. Kind of work my way around. There's a lot. We can still put a lot of those branches in. You can see where I dabbed out. It's not going into my mailbox. Kind of getting into here. And again, I got to be mindful that I'm on the decline here as I'm going away from my road. Just kind of getting in there. But do you see how pretty this edge is as I'm putting this in? It's just kind of doing its own thing. It's not a real hard edge. And then up and through here, I can get a little bit, get up along bottom of that one. The second one, it's pretty close there. And then get some nice juicy stuff back in through here. I'm just going to try to do a nice tall tree shape back here. Where those would be connecting. And this kind of goes off in the distance. We got some yellow up here. And actually we'll fill this in later. There'll be other tree stumps here. So what I would like to do while this is nice and wet, look at this nice edge here. This didn't get quite as, it's really nice up here. Didn't get quite as dissipated up here. So if I take a damp, clean brush and just kind of go along that edge, it should get rid of that hard edge. And you can see it kind of moving now toward that wet paint that I put on there. Okay, then these do have a lot of, I don't know, this is almost more like shrubs or weeds along the edge. So I'm going to get some of my dark brown, either a mixture you made or a dark brown that out of the tube. Like I said, purple and a dark yellow make a nice, and just kind of get some of these things in here. All along the bottom here. And then where this guy would be attached to that tree. So I'm going to just start putting in some of that brown. It's probably too early. I'll have to fix that later. And just, you don't want straight lines through everything because the foliage is still pretty full. Just get some shapes in there. And you could put some, maybe I'll put a little bit of green because there would still be some grass probably on that side of the road too. So I can stick a little bit of green in there. Grass or other weeds that are still haven't quite died yet. Just to break up that color. Like I said, I'll have to fix that stump later. And it looks like I could even probably put a little bit of green back up in here just because, real light green. Break up some of that color a little bit. Like there would be maybe some evergreens back in the distance. And I'm glad I did mask because, you know, you see how easy it is now to put that barrier in, and you can get in there now and just fill in the spaces around. Just move that yellow kind of around the mailbox a little bit. And same with this, if you wanted to spatter a little bit of a darker color in there, in this case, I would definitely just recommend, you know, getting a paper towel and putting it over your other flag. Maybe I'll take a little bit of new gamboge and see if I can should have left it alone. clean brush, still wet, I can get in there and clean that up. Clean that up. Get some of my bright yellow and maybe even just, this will just give it some texture. Just kind of dab up wherever you don't want it. Okay, that would be your next part. Let me start that again. Okay, so I'm going to do just one evergreen here, even though there's a cluster. And then I do like this white, but the problem is that I've got the light blue up here and then just white is right here. I don't want to just have that cut off, and the same with under here. So I am going to take my misting bottle and just mist that area, and then the same with the edges of the evergreens. I want those to be kind of fluffing out on the ends too. So I'm just going to kind of mist the one edge of that, not the whole evergreen, just the one edge. And before I do the evergreen, I'm just going to get a little bit more cerulean up under here. Maybe in through here a little bit. And if I'm getting these hard edges, oh, there's a lot of yellow in that water. Just dab the edge. And then the same with this side here. I can just put a little bit of the cerulean, kind of let it work its way down a little bit, just so it's not such a huge transition from blue to nothing. And then just soften whatever edge you need. Okay. So now the evergreen is pretty light on the front side. So I'm going to start, I actually might start with a little bit of Quin Gold. Well, no, I'm going to start on the inner side because I do want those to fluff out and it's pretty wet there. So I've got this green, it's a Daniel Smith, it's called Green Appetite. And if you don't have this, it's a beautiful green. I don't know if you can see it on the palette. It's a nice medium to dark green. Again, you could use burnt sienna and Prussian, or burnt sienna and indigo, Quin Gold, and either of those two. But I just wanted to show you the color that this is, and it's just really beautiful. And see how having that little bit of the mist on the ends just has them kind of go out and do their own thing there. Kind of just getting in here with some of this green. Actually, I think rather than mist, I'm gonna get wet all the way across the bottom because it's pretty, there's other stuff there besides the evergreen, and I just want that to kind of work in on its own kind of thing. So it's some of the green. Now I am going to take some indigo and kind of, these would be the branch like coming at you. Overlay them a little bit. Kind of just taking my brush sometimes and laying on top some color. And again, it's kind of dark at the bottom there, so I can swoop in near this edge. I don't have to worry too much. I may leave it like that, but I do want to get in, I'm going to use a smaller brush and just kind of get in. That's really actually a nice color, but I am going to put in a little bit of Quin Gold just to brighten it maybe a little bit. Just here and there. I think that looks okay. Maybe a little bit more, since this was on the bottom, the green apatite. I could and then have a little round of the indigo, just to kind of near the top. I just want to show a little bit more of the detail. And these are so full, I'm not even going to worry about putting in a center. If you wanted to take a little bit of the, maybe in through here just a little bit. Good trunk. Again, not too much, just a little bit to show. And I'm going to leave that. I don't mind that it's like a little bit runny right there. I think it really adds that nice soft. So that's where we're at. Oops. Right there. Okay, so for today then, we're going to finish up the flags in the foreground and the mailboxes. And I'm going to jump around a little bit just because I want to get some, first thing I'm going to do is get some shadows in the flags because they're waving in the wind, so there will be shadows. So I want to show you the photo references a little bit up close. You'll see that this flag has that nice highlight, those highlights there. I'm going to try to preserve those whites. Same with this little one. There's, if you have that one in your drawing, there's some whites on there. Remember, we removed that sign and the post or the pole. And then as you're looking at this, because that's so bright as the flag is kind of dipping down, there's going to be some shadows on this side of the flag, I guess the left-hand side, and there will be some shadows on the center flag. So I'll start with those because I want those to dry before I start adding some red. And the reason why I put in the shadows first is because once you put in the red, if you try to put some shadows over that, that red is just gonna, you know, bleed everywhere. So shadows go in first when you're dealing with reds. Let me see, what brush do I want? I'll take a softer brush. I don't have to worry about shadows. Well, I guess I could put some shadows up where the stars are too, because they're pretty, they're not bright white stars, they're shadowed. So the color that I normally use for these types of shadows is just a little bit of light purple. I forget, I think this is ultramarine violet. And you can see it there. I add a little bit of cerulean. So that gives me this bluish purpley color. And then if you wanted to just tone it, you can just, I just take the tip of my brush and put it in some sap green, and that kind of tones it down a little bit. So I've got this nice juicy sample here. And if you haven't taken off the masking fluid and all that other stuff, you're gonna do that before you start painting. So I guess I'm just gonna push some of this across the top. And I'm not too worried about, and there is another highlight in through here. So I'm gonna kind of get some of this down here. And then this whole backside is pretty well shadowed from this flip where it's flipping upwards. I'm gonna put some of this purpley gray right into there.
Can you make
And
your
then-
picture bigger? Can you make the screen bigger?
Hold on a second. All right, so this one, I'm going to kind of get in along that bottom edge where it's flowing. And then same with this back one over here, I can get a little bit of shadow on the top side of that and on this little one here. Just to give it, like I said, some of those cast shadows in there. All right, so that's the first step. Then we're going to move along, and I guess we'll do the foreground because we want that to dry before we do these really cool shadows. So again, these are pretty bright colors, even though it's the fall. The grass hasn't turned its ugly shade of green or brown yet. So I'm going to just wet this section in through here up to the road. And I think I can get some sap green. Kind of get that over there where it's really bright. And through here, take some yellow, light yellow. This is aureolin. Lay that over. And actually, there are actually a lot of leaves on the ground, so we could spatter in some darker. And that is pretty bright, so let me get some, I'm going to take my sap green and just add a little bit of Prussian to it, just to darken it a little bit. Tone that down. And then if you wanted to make it a little bit more cohesive, you could take some burnt sienna. I'm just going to turn my paper because I don't want my spattering to go all over this, and just kind of get it nice and wet. And pretend those are a little bit of leaves. Leaves. There we go. I'm just going to dab up a couple of those spatters that went into my edge of the road. Then the roadway, that will be gray. Same with this. I'm going to just, it's not a big area, so I'm going to take some more of that light purple cerulean, take a little bit of this green that I already have over here, and just keep playing with a little bit till you get it to the gray that you like. This is a nice one. And again, there's going to be a lot of shadows coming across there, so the lighter color is fine for the first layer of this roadway. And I guess I could just leave the white. I kind of like that stripe on the side of the road. We could just leave that partially white. Painting around that post for the mailbox. And if the side of the road and the grass blend, that's okay, because out in the country, that's what happens anyway. You get a lot of overgrowth from driveways into that little section of the road. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop right here because I want this to dry before I start doing the mailboxes and the flags. It'll give you a minute to get that masking fluid off and get these couple of quick little steps in. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so now my shadows and my foreground have pretty much dried. We're going to move right into the flags. I'm going to start with the small flag because it's down here, and if, you know, if it just doesn't look right, it's not the main flag. But you can see, I'll put this up here again. This little one back here has a pretty nice highlight going right through the center of it. So you don't even have to really put too much detail in that flag. I'm going to try to leave that. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to probably use more flat brushes here, or my stiffer brushes if you have them. If you don't, whatever you have will work. So in this little corner, I'm just going to put some water, but I'm not going to wet the whole area. I'm just going to kind of wet a little bit. Not going to even worry. You can't see the stars on that one. I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to start with some cobalt blue. It's a really nice medium blue, and just let that kind of work its magic in that corner. And I'm going to make sure I leave that nice highlight there. And you can see how I wet it. You can still see, I guess, it's kind of nice. It didn't fill in completely, so it almost looks like there are some stars showing through. So that's the first color. I'm going to put in a little bit of Prussian, just to kind of give it a little bit of a darker edge near that bottom over here, and maybe up here. Change it up a little bit. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing with this blue one. We're not going to paint in 50 stars. We're just going to give the illusion that there's stars there. So same with this one. I'm going to get my wet flat brush, kind of just go in, and I'm kind of just giving some like almost C shapes, like see the letter C. Wet it with some, like I say, some C shapes or whatever would work for you. And then I'm going to tilt it a little bit so I can make sure I can see where it is. And then same with this, I'm going to go along the top edge and the side edge and the left edge, and let these colors kind of flow in. And then a lot of dots. I'm just going to dot a lot of this area. Just to show that there are those star shapes in there. Right. If there's any really large openings, you can just, like I say, use some, just kind of cut into them with a little bit of the cobalt. And then again, I'm going to just take some Prussian to darken up a little bit of the all right, so that's kind of what it looks like. You get the shapes in there, but those two are pushed back enough where we don't even have to worry about getting, and this one faded in a little bit, so I'm just going to put a little bit more of the blue in there. This one's probably going to fade too, so maybe I'm going to just go in there right now before it dries, charge in some darker blue. This is totally up to you. If you want to try to draw in all those little shapes, you could, but make it look painterly. All right, so those two, I'll save the big one for last because, like I said, I want to get in and just start doing some of these stripes now. So the white is going to be the white of your paper. Red, you can use alizarin, or I think I've got, I don't know what color. I think this might be Windsor red, which is supposed to be just red out of the tube. So now what I do on my larger flag, which I haven't really done with the smaller ones, I usually put a little X where the reds are so that I don't mess that up. But on this one, I'm just gonna kind of go for it and see what happens. So I'm just gonna no wet into wet, just kind of directly paint. So there would be 4. There's my highlight coming through there. So there's 2, 3, and 4. So you can make your wave go however you want to. And the reason why I do like doing flags with that are flowing is because if you don't have to have them all equal and you don't have to have them perfect. The fabric is going to be moving along, and you would have the fabric would be thicker and narrower as the flag is going. So this one is actually kind of swooping up a little bit. So we're just going to kind of have that bottom one kind of come in, and the bottom has 3 stripes. So we're going to put 1, 2, and 3. All right, now I'm going to keep the red. I've got actually 2 flat brushes, so I probably could. I'm going to soften this blue edge a little bit. So I've got my wet, clean brush, just kind of softening that blue edge just so it doesn't. There. And that is your first flag. The second flag, do the same thing, a little bit of red. Same with this top part is kind of circling under, so it's a little bit wider up here and narrower as it's coming around. So that's 1. This one is 2. 3. And 4. And the one thing with red, just want to make sure you're applying it with the same thickness. So it's the same color as you're going through. So let me get now the 3. These are actually pretty straight, but I can make them curvy if I want to. So we got this one. Here's 1. 2. It's a little thin in the center there. Let me fix that up. And 1 more, 3. All right, so I'll stop, let you guys catch up with that, and then we'll come back and do the bigger flag. All right, so I am going to now move on to the larger flag. And, this is more in the foreground. So these stars, you could do a couple of different ways. We could do it the same way as the other ones and just wet the section using those little, like I call it the letter C, and just kind of fill in randomly. Or if you just wanted to do paint on the dry, you could almost go about it the same way, just paint in different shapes. You don't have to do star shapes, but you would just paint in basically negative paint around where the stars would be. Thinking it's going to be quicker, I'm going to do the C shapes. I'm going to leave, again, this has that beautiful highlight all the way through the right-hand side of the flag and down almost toward the center a little bit. So I'm going to leave the white of the paper there. So I can get in here and just start doing some C shapes or whatever kind of shapes, just water right now with my brush. Just kind of fill in that area. And don't want to go too far. And then start up here kind of the same way. this would, you'd leave bigger spaces at this when you're doing this because these whites would be larger than those ones that we did below. So let me see how this goes. Let me just get some cobalt blue to start with again. It's a beautiful blue for flags. And I'm holding it up just so I can see where my water is going. And look at that. It's just kind of traveling along where I put those shapes. They're all kind of interconnected, so they're just gonna leave some nice white on the paper. And again, we're just covering this whole large space very quickly. Get in here. My white, and this also is giving me an idea to see where my is going to be going. So this is the cobalt. Now I'm going to take some Prussian and kind of go along that edge, let it kind of fill in a little bit. Go along this edge. And a little bit of that. I don't want to go all the way across the bottom because we've got that highlight coming through. And then now I have this lacy effect. So now I can go in and kind of start filling in some of the extra whites. With if I have too much, I can just get in there and there's not going to be any stars too close to the edge, so I can fill in some of that. And I can cut in, you know, make it, you know, like there's edges where they would be the shapes of the stars. But I mean, even that's a lot. So I'll probably have to go back in and fill in some of these spots, like that one, this one. That one's pretty close. This all up here has to be finished, kind of filled in a little bit. I never got quite along that edge. But it's looking pretty good, I think.
Beautiful.
Let me get some more darks in the center of this, just so there's some variation of the color, the blue. All right, I think that's good. I'll let this dry a little bit, and then if I have to fill in, if it looks like there's too many little shapes in here, I can fill some in after it dries. But I don't think it's so bad. So then next we're gonna go start with those reds again. And here again, we got four stripes on the top, 3 on the bottom. I'm gonna switch to, well, you know what, I have a bigger, I think I'm gonna stick with that flat brush or angled brush because that worked pretty good for the smaller ones. So this one's a 5/8 inch flat or angled. Just gonna dip right into my red. It's nice and wet and juicy, pretty thick, because I don't want to have to go in and let that red dry and have it dry too light. Where it's flipped, I'm gonna wait. I'm just gonna do this first rows right in through here. I'm gonna let the flipped ones come in later. So I can do these 4, those 3, and then I'll go back and do those. They're a little bit of a darker red, so I'm gonna mix a different color. So this one, and be careful if your blue is still a little bit wet, you don't wanna drag that blue. Although it is pretty shadowed, you don't wanna really drag it. So I'm just gonna pull some of this red. The bottom one, I like to do the top and the bottom, that way I know how much space is in between. So this one is, that one. We got our third one in here. Again, you can make it as curvy as you want, and you don't have to worry about all the edges being the same distance apart. And then this fourth one. It's a nice red for the flags. I don't think I ever had this red when I did flags before, so I'm actually pretty pleased with that color. Moving on to these ones at the bottom, there's a lot of motion in these, so I'll start with the bottom one, I think. So I got 1, 2, 3. That starts from here. Kind of disappears a little bit along this edge. And then comes back around and swings into that nice thick, like it's flipped over. The second one kind of disappears also. So where's my line for that? That one kind of goes right into there. There's a little bit of it down here. And then the third one, see if I can get this. Okay, so that space in there is a little bit too big, so I'm going to have to just bring this. There's too much white there. It does not look realistic. Okay, and then for these, because they're so dark, I'm going to just take some of that red, a little bit of the, it's too much. I'm going to take a little bit of the blue with some of my red on my palette, get a little bit of a darker red, and then just go in and get those done. Mm. At least the first few on top. The first four are pretty dark and then they get lighter again, where the light's coming through on the bottom. Just make them the ones we're working on now offset just a little bit so it does look like it's not a continuation of the other one, that it's actually flipped. Get back to my regular red and get some of that in there. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Six, 7. All right. Oh, so now I forgot about my little highlight there. Let me see if I can get in and fix that right away. I have to take my clean brush, make sure there's no red paint on it. And I just want, this is kind of coming down, so I just want to swoop out some of that red. Clean brush, get on top of there and swoop it out. Dab it up with your clean paper towel. There. And then same with this, we're going to soften those edges, and then I think we'll be done with this. Clean brush again, really make sure there's no red because you don't want the red. I'm going to go with my other brush. Clean it off. Clean, damp, and just kind of go in and soften that edge. I usually a little circular motion along the edge of that. You almost could put a little bit of light blue in there because I do see a little bit of there. So you can work on that. Okay, so the next thing, I just want to get all these posts and then the mailbox posts, and also you'll notice, I'll pull this up real close in case you can't see it. The top side has a highlight on all the posts, and on the right side of the mailboxes, there's a highlight. So the easiest way to do these is to, if you have a flat brush again or an angled brush, that would probably be the easiest way. Clean, wet brush and just trail along the whole post. So it's nice and wet. And then I'm just going to take indigo blue, any color that you want really, that's darker. I'm just going to turn this a little bit because I'm just going to apply this to the bottom edge. And let it bleed toward the top edge. Maybe I should get a little bit more of a purpley color, grayish. So let me just get some of this light purple in there, a little bit of green. Tone that blue down just a little bit. A little bit of green and purple. Well, actually, that's a nice steel looking color. So go along that edge. And then the post, same thing. You can put it any color. I'll just do it a little bit of this kind of blackish gray. Same thing with that. Leave a little bit of a highlight. So I just wet that edge a little bit. Pull it around. Get a nice highlight. And if the water isn't moving enough for you, you can just take your damp brush and kind of soften that edge a little bit. Get it moving so it looks round and highlighted. Do that to that one. Do it to this one. Next one in line. And this is kind of going into an invisible little tree. I'm going to have to do something with that tree too. So we'll see what happens with that. A little bit of this. Use either your indigo or this steel color that I kind of made up. Put that little post on the top. Number 2. Number 3. The third one's, hard to really even see, so you just get in whatever you can. There's number 3. Maybe I will fix that little tree stump. Take some brown. Make that tree a little bit more pronounced there. Since it looks like we've got a couple of flags coming out into that one. Still a little off balance, but I'm not gonna, there's nothing I can do about that now. This post, let's see, so same with this, I'm just gonna get it wet on the one side for all 3. Put in my gray, or whatever color you wanna make the post. Usually they're wood or metal, so gray usually works okay. Put those 3 things in. A little bit of a shadow underneath. And then the mailboxes, you can make them any color. I kind of would like to draw some of this red down and through here too. So we've got the little flags on the mailboxes that we can paint in. So I think I will just get a little bit of wet, dampen that mailbox. And I still have some of this grayish color, so I'll put some on the front of that. Kind of let it just merge into the water a little bit. Nothing too detailed. And then what I'm going to do also is get a little bit of burnt sienna. They're kind of rusty, so I can put in a little bit of burnt sienna to show the rust. Poor mailboxes out in the country. They're always rusty. I left the back side of that open too because the sun is hitting that pretty hard. This mailbox, maybe it is kind of blue in there, so maybe I'll do the blue mailbox. Same with that side, I'll leave that pretty bright on the back side. Try to get that space for that little flag, and I can get that done in a minute. And the one end of distance, I'm just gonna put some gray on it. I'm not even gonna worry about. Too much with that. Just get that up here. And the back side of this one, I'm just gonna put a little bit of blue on there so you can see it's the back side of the mailbox. And then a little bit of the red for those flags. Flags are kind of rusty looking too, so I'll put a little bit of burnt sienna on there. Okay. Then also I'm just gonna get a little bit more green, kind of to show the grass coming up around the mailbox. And then finally, the shadow. So the interesting thing, which I'm still deciding what I want to do, the shadow across the street is gray, but across the yard is kind of green. And I wanted to just do this all in one motion because it's just from these trees. So I think I'm going to have to use my better judgment and go with a grayish color for the shadows. And another thing that you'll notice is that when you're looking at this, let me see, where are we at here? There is distance in the shadows. So as you're up here in the distance, the shadows are closer together. And as they're coming towards you, they're further apart. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind when we're doing the shadows. So I'm going to take that color scheme, your purple, light purple. Put it in the middle of my palette here. Can you see that? Yep. Light purple. I'm going to get a lot of it because I want to do this once. Shadows, you're in and out. You can't monkey around with them. It's one and done. So purple, some blue, and some green. And actually, that's a nice middle of the road gray. That might work. I can push it a little bit more toward the green.
No pun intended.
Right. Yeah, that's a nice color. Okay, so it's nice and juicy. And it's starting, okay, so I'm gonna just turn my page a little bit. I'm gonna have to skip over where the posts are, but take it all the way across the road, kind of just skedaddle it across there, and skip over there. And then they get a little bit wider and through here. Actually, it's picking up the green. It's sheer enough where it's actually going through the green. A little bit of this coming around here. All the way across the road. And then there's just a little bit more going back over here. Yeah, I'm not going to mess with that. I think that's going to be good. This part might be a little bit dark because I had so much paint on there, so I'm just going to go over the top of that a little bit and pull some of that up. And the other thing I'm noticing, I know I wanted to have the sky nice and bright here, but I'm keep looking at this white spot. So what I'm gonna do is just, I've got these two little green, like there's trees in the distance. I'm gonna just add another one of those right here. So I'm just gonna wet this little area and take, I don't know, whatever green this was last week, that nice Daniel Smith color. And just kind of put some of that. I think that was enough. That's enough right there to break that up. Yeah. Okay, so I think that is it. There might be some tweaks that you might want to do later on, soften some hard edges that you might see coming through, but I think I'm pretty happy with this one.
Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed painting this lovely flag scene. If you have any questions, again, email me. I'd love to also see your finished paintings. So again, my email is cheryl@cherylperez.com, or you can find me on Instagram or Facebook. So happy painting and keep at it. Thanks. Bye-bye.